The biggest risk right now is a lot of this anti-globalization rhetoric. I think that right now we have actual trade going on. I think that there's a recovery in trade, which we see also correlating globally with economic recovery in China and some of the Gulf countries. And that has spilled over to India. The trade numbers for India have gone up, and that is also supporting the economic growth. But there's a lot of talk about going back from trade and globalization. That would be a big risk if this current recovery in trade is not sustained going forward.
So do you foresee more job losses for India in the near term? Because the IT sector has anyway seen a whole host of job losses recently. Do you see more job losses in going forward, or do you just foresee less of new job creation?
No, actually, I think that we foresee more job creation. I mean, the kind of growth rates that we are forecasting, as you said, 7.5% by FY19, those would actually, be related to significant job gains. Now, sometimes different sectors, they may shed workers or they may gain workers. There might be the new sector that might be creating a lot of employment that may not be evident today. And even the IT sector, I mean, I think that every sector goes through some of this creative destruction from time to time, where it may seem that right now the employment situation is down, but I think that the IT sector in India has a very significant potential, and in the medium term, in this kind of FY19 outlook, it might even be adding workers.
On a longer term sustainable basis, how do you see things post demonetization?
Well, so we see some important potential kind of improvements in the Indian economy. One is with respect to taxation, where you have a bit of the carrot and the stick between demonetization and GST. On the one hand, I think that many informal traders, informal manufacturers, they felt compelled to pay their taxes so that they could deposit their banknotes. But on the other hand, they know that GST is coming up. So with GST coming up, you have an incentive to actually be part of the chain so that you can claim your input tax credits and remain competitive as a supplier. So I think that that's something that going forward, it will help India kind of raise its game in terms of collection of taxes and allowing the government to deliver public services and infrastructure. So that's a positive change going forward.
Have you worked out the numbers as to what kind of an impact will we see in growth post GST?
It's very difficult. I've seen some of the numbers. I have not myself actually tried to quantify it, because we expected the improvements are things like, the trucks that spend less time at the border because the inspection is less onerous, or firms that were previously optimizing because of the tax situation, and now they're going to be optimizing their production based on where the consumers are and where is more efficient to produce. These things are very difficult to model and to quantify. It's just quite clear to us that every factor points towards efficiency improvements and higher GDP growth, but the magnitude is very difficult. There are some very legitimate studies that try to estimate that, but I found it very difficult.
Now that the NPA ordinance is in place, what kind of impact do you foresee?
I haven't we haven't seen yet how this begins to be implemented. I think that what I take it from the ordinance is that it's a clear signal that the government takes the problem very seriously, right? So they've tried several things before. They forced the banks to acknowledge the extent of the problem, and now they are offering several tools for the banks to try to resolve. We now have an Insolvency and Bankruptcy Act that is in place. So I think that we are hopeful that the ordinance is going to have the intended effect. But clearly, we see a government that is very committed to trying different things and new things to solve the problem.
Do you also believe that going forward, the government should look at perhaps consolidation of private sector, consolidation of PSU banks? We've already seen SBI's merger with some of its subsidiaries. But do you foresee that more banks should be perhaps taking this option?
I think that as our director said, I mean, it's very important for banks to behave more as actual independent corporations, and whether the model of that is one where they remain with a public control, or whether there's some decrease in the public control or being merged. I mean, I think that those are things that more kind of financial sector specialists could advise you. But the move of banks towards more kind of a corporate culture, where the loans are made based on corporate prerogatives, I think that's something that is going to be very important going forward.
Find us on Facebook at facebook.com/ETNow, and don't forget to click the like button. You can also follow us on Twitter at ETNowLive. To stay updated with all our programming, hit the subscribe button on our YouTube channel by logging on to youtube.com/ETNow.